Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 13 Monday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. We do got a pretty good game this Monday night. It's not going to be a shootout, I don't think. Right now, this game does have a very low total. There's expected to be some pretty rough weather. It's going to be really cold. It's going to be really windy. It could possibly be snowing in Buffalo Monday night. But it's two really good teams going up against each other, the Patriots and the Bills. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. For the showdown slate, are we going to see a ton of points scored? Is it going to be a super high scoring slate? Probably not. But we'll kind of talk through how I'm approaching this slate. We'll talk about the weather. How does that affect the DFS slate? How does that affect the decisions we should be making? We'll kind of discuss that too. We'll go top to bottom. Really hit on all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in for this slate. And then towards the end of the video, we'll kind of talk through roster construction, break down, how I'm looking to build out my lineups, who I like playing at captain. If you should be correlating your lineups, we will discuss that as well. But before we do get started with the breakdown, as always, guys, please hit the like button down below. I always do appreciate all the likes. If you're new to the channel here, make sure you click that subscribe button as well. Also, click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And then lastly, check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. If you guys have not signed up for PrizePicks yet, you would like to try them out, sign up and use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit. They will give you a free bet up to $100 when you do sign up with my code. PrizePicks is basically they're a player prop based DFS site, so it's very simple. You're just picking whether you think a player goes over or under their projection. As you can see, they have a lot of fantasy point projections already posted for Monday night's game. Really, every player that you expect to get at least a few points, at least that projects for at least a couple points in fantasy point projection, they're going to have them on the board. So they already have all these players posted. They also do have like player props posted on PrizePicks, so you can do like passing yards for the quarterbacks, rushing yards, receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns. They got everything, and it's very simple. You pick over or under. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 5 picks. You can win up to 10 extra money over on PrizePicks. If you guys do want to sign up, make sure you use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit. They will give you a free bet up to $100. As always, shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring all these videos. Greatly appreciate them. I've been playing a ton on PrizePicks lately. Been really enjoying getting action in for these primetime games. I'm not really a big fan of Showdown. I've said that before. I don't really play a ton of money on Showdown slates. I think there's a lot of variance. It's very random. I would rather go over to PrizePicks and do an entry for the game. Make some picks there, just because I think that's a little bit easier to win. So if you want to check out PrizePicks, again, sign up, use code NOAH, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. But let's take a look at tonight's Showdown slate. We're going to start off at the top. So Josh Allen, most expensive option, $11,200. Clearly Josh Allen is a top play on this slate. Any slate, especially for Showdown that he's on, he is going to project out as one of the best plays. I think that's definitely the case here. The matchup against New England, probably not ideal. Obviously, the weather in this game is not ideal either. But Allen is still going to project 5, 6, 7 points higher than the next guy. We know he's an elite fantasy quarterback, gives you a ton of upside through the air, can also can get you fantasy points with his legs as well. He's always a threat to, score a rushing touchdown whenever they get near the goal line. So really like Josh Allen here, even in a tough spot. He's clearly a top play, just in my opinion. Don't know how much I'll be playing him in captain. I tend to not play quarterbacks too much at captain. I will say, though, Josh Allen is kind of like he's a different breed. He's one of these guys that can go out there and put up like 35, 40 DraftKings points. Is he likely to do that in this, matchup, in this type of game environment, in this type of conditions? Probably not, but he does give you that upside every time he steps on the floor. Josh Allen, clearly a top play here. Then you got Steph Diggs at $10,600. Tough matchup against New England. I'm sure New England's probably going to do their best to try and double team Steph Diggs. They're kind of famous for taking away the opponent's best player. So we might see them double Steph Diggs a lot. We might see them shadow. We don't really know what they're going to do, but regardless, I think Steph Diggs is going to see plenty of opportunity in terms of targets. So far this season, he's gotten at least like 6 targets or 5 targets in every single game this year. Lately, he's been scoring touchdowns as well. And that was something that he really wasn't doing too much at the beginning of the year. The touchdowns for him weren't really that great. Last few weeks, though, he's been finding the end zone. He scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. He's found the end zone. I think Steph Diggs is a fine play as well. I do prefer Josh Allen just straight up. I think I would rather play Mac Jones as well. The quarterbacks are normally always going to be focal points for me, just because I think quarterbacks always give you a very, very high floor. They usually offer a pretty decent ceiling as well. In cash games, you usually always want to play both quarterbacks. In tournaments, do you have to play both quarterbacks? I don't think you do. Normally, you want to play at least one of the two. If I can only play one of the 2 quarterbacks in this game, I obviously would prefer Josh Allen. But Mac Jones, he's been playing really well lately. He's shown some fantasy upside. Last week against Tennessee, threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now this spot on the road against Buffalo, facing a really good defense and what should be really tough conditions. It's going to be windy, it's going to be cold. I don't think we're going to get like a massive game from Mac Jones, but he still is going to project out as a very safe play here. He's still going to project out as one of the top options overall. Is his ceiling the same as Steph Diggs? I don't know. I think Steph Diggs maybe offers you a little bit of a higher ceiling. In terms of floor, though, quarterbacks always will give you, relatively higher floors than receivers will. So, like, if you're playing cash, I would probably prioritize Mac Jones over Steph Diggs. In tournaments, I think both are viable. I think Steph Diggs maybe gives you a little bit more upside, although, I do worry about them, that New England at least, trying to do their best to slow him down, to take him away. But then you got Damian Harris at 9,800. So, Damian Harris in this spot, like, I don't really like Damian Harris. It's a tough matchup on the road. It's a game where you don't think, New England's, they're not going to be playing with a lead most likely. We've seen this year when New England's playing with a lead, they'll just feed the ball to Damian Harris. But when they do get behind, like, he's not a guy that's really going to get involved much in the passing game. You look at his opportunity in the passing game this year, I mean, most targets he's seen all season is 3. That's really not great. 9,800, he's kind of expensive. I don't love Damian Harris, I don't love Damian Harris on this slate. I think he's a little bit expensive. He's going to be contrarian. I don't expect him to get a ton of ownership, but I'd rather play the quarterbacks. I'd rather play Steph Diggs. Probably would rather play some of these wide receivers for a little bit cheaper as well. So Kendrick Bourne, you got at 8,600. I'll say when it comes to these Patriots wide receivers, like, I never know which one to play. On the main slates, I haven't really been stacking the Patriots much this season. We have seen, New England lately be decent, like especially last week. Mac Jones, threw for over 300 yards. Kendrick Bourne had a really good game, got into the end zone twice. I still feel like you never know which Patriots receiver is going to have a good game, but Kendrick Bourne, like, he's going to be on the field for a large majority of the snaps. He's kind of taken over as like their wide receiver 1. Him and Jacoby Myers will still they'll still get a decent amount of targets. Jacoby Myers this year has been the guy that's led the team in targets, but Kendrick Bourne's been playing really well. He still played like 55% of the snaps last week. I think when he's on the field, he's going to be running routes. He's not on the field as much as Myers and Aguilar. Those are kind of the guys they use on the outside. They mainly just use Kendrick Bourne in the slot, but when he's on the field, he's going to be out there running routes. So I think he's definitely playable at 8,600. I think Cole Beasley at 7,800. Again, another slot receiver. Not going to be on the field for 90% of the snaps, but he'll probably play 50 to 60% of the snaps. When Cole Beasley's on the field, he's going to be out there running routes. We know he's a guy that can catch a lot of balls. We've seen games this year where he gets 8, 10 catches. He doesn't run too many routes way deep down the field. He runs a lot of quick slants, which is really good for DraftKings. Given DraftKings full PPR scoring, you want guys that can catch 6, 7, 8 balls, and that's definitely something that Cole Beasley can do. At 7,800, I kind of like him in the mid-range. I think he's definitely probably one of my favorite receivers between him, Bourne, and Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby Myers at 7,200 is in play as well. He's going to be on the field for close to every snap. He's basically their number 1 receiver in terms of playing time, in terms of targets. I know Kendrick Bourne's been having some good games lately, but Myers is still the guy that's going to be on the field for a large majority of the game. He's played at least 87% of the snaps in 4 of their last 5 games. The matchup against Buffalo is tough. He might see some Trey White, or I think Trey White's actually out right now, so scratch that. I don't think he's not going to see Trey White because Trey White's out right now, but it's still a really tough Buffalo secondary. It's still a tough matchup on the road. Again, I don't know what the upside really is for these Patriots receivers. I don't see Mac Jones having like a massive game and throwing for 3, 4 touchdowns. But given game script, given that the Patriots will probably be playing from behind, there's at least going to be some opportunity for these guys. Again, it's so tough to predict which one of these Patriots receivers is going to have the good game. I think Myers at 7,200 is in play. I think Cole Beasley's in play as well. Kendrick Bourne's fine too. I would probably put him behind those guys, especially because he's a little bit more expensive. Then you got Matt Breida at 6,600. So Matt Breida was kind of the RB2 last week on Thanksgiving against the Saints. They actually did not make Zach Moss active. Zach Moss was actually inactive last week, and Singletary and Breida were the only 2 running backs that were active. We saw Breida get 11 touches. He did get kind of lucky getting to the end zone. He's not going to get enough volume, I don't think, to where he's someone I really want to pay 6,600 for. Could he catch a touchdown? Could he break off a long run and score a touchdown? It's possible, but when he only projects for maybe 7, 8, 9 touches, it's really tough to pay 6,600 for him. We could see Zach Moss be active this week. We don't really know. We don't have an update on Zach Moss yet. If Zach Moss is active, then yeah, I have no interest in Breida. I would only be considering Breida if Zach Moss is a healthy scratch again. And even if he is, I still don't think Breida's a great play at 6,600. He's just too expensive for the few, amount of touches he's going to get. Then you got Manny Sanders at 6,400. Manny Sanders, he's going to get probably 5-6 targets. He's going to play on a decent amount of snaps. Like last week, Manny Sanders played on 77% of the snaps. He's played around 70 to 80% of the snaps most weeks. This is a pretty heavy, pass-heavy Bills offense. I will say in these type of conditions, with it being really windy and really cold, maybe we see them run the ball a little bit more than they normally would. But still, I think we're going to get 5-6 targets from Manny Sanders. At 6,400, totally in play. I think he's a fine option. Not like my favorite receiver or anything, but I do prefer him over Breida. Between him or Jacoby Myers, I think I'd rather have Jacoby Myers, but that's definitely a close one. I think I'd rather play Beasley over Sanders, though, if you can find the salary to get to Beasley. But Manny Sanders is firmly in play on the Showdown slate. Then we start to get to some value. So below 6K, I mean, there's not a ton of cheap guys I love down here, but there's definitely some playable options. So Ramondre Stevenson at 5,600, he's going to be the backup behind Damian Harris. He's probably going to get anywhere from like 10 to 12 touches. I think if this game leads to New England kind of, if they're forced to throw, if they get behind, maybe we see Stevenson a little bit more involved. They will involve him a little bit more in the passing game than they will, Damian Harris. I still don't love Stevenson at 5,600 though. Now that Damian Harris is active again, we saw Stevenson have a great game against Cleveland in Week 10 when Damian Harris was out. But really, ever since Damian Harris has come back, Stevenson 13 touches, 9 touches, 8 DraftKings points, 4 DraftKings points. Like, I really just don't know what his ceiling is with Damian Harris active, with some of these other guys active too. Like the Patriots, they usually have 3, sometimes 4 running backs active each week. So Stevenson at 5,600, I'm not a big fan of. I think Dawson Knox at 5,400 is definitely in play. Dawson Knox has shown somewhat of a ceiling this year. He's normally not a guy we really ever think about having a high ceiling. So like lately, or at least I would say like last year and the years before, he's always just kind of been like touchdown or bust. But this year, we've actually seen some big games from Dawson Knox. 80 receiving yards against the Colts back in Week 11. Had over 100 receiving yards against KC back in Week 5. He's going to be on the field a ton. He's going to be on the field for a large majority of the game. At 5,400, I think if you're looking for a cheap play with some upside, I definitely do have a good amount of interest in Dawson Knox. I like him quite a bit. He's for sure my favorite tight end in this game. I would much rather play Dawson Knox over Hunter Henry, over Jonnu Smith. Hunter Henry doesn't offer you the same upside that Dawson Knox does, and given they're the same price point, I would just rather play Knox. I think Henry will be a lot lower owned, so in tournaments, if you want to pivot, it's fine, but Hunter Henry this year, he's really just kind of been touchdown or bust. Like his best game of the season was against Cleveland when he had 19 DK points. He caught 2 touchdowns that week. Obviously, that's not something we can really predict happens. Could he catch two touchdowns? It's possible, but he's a touchdown or bust player. At 5,200, I don't really like Hunter Henry that much on this slate. Now that Jonnu Smith's back, he's not going to play as many snaps, maybe not run as many routes. Just not a guy I'm probably going to be on. Devin Singletary at 4,600 really hasn't shown much upside this year. As I said earlier, the Bills, they are a very pass-heavy offense. Now, again, with it being windy, with it being cold, with these type of conditions, do they run the ball a little bit more Monday night than they normally would? It's possible. I still don't know what Singletary's upside really is at 4,600, but if Zach Moss is inactive again, I think you can expect Singletary and Breida to really be the only guys that get touches. And last week, with Zach Moss inactive, you got 16 touches for Devin Singletary. Now, he only got 1 target. He wasn't really efficient as a runner. He still only had 5 DraftKings points. But if you told me before the slate started that Devin Singletary was going to get 16 touches, I would like him a lot. Now, does that happen again? I don't know. The matchup's tough against New England, but I think Singletary is viable at 4,600. I would definitely have a lot more confidence in him, though, if Zach Moss is a healthy scratch again. That's news we'll have to wait and see on when inactives are announced an hour and a half before kickoff. But Singletary could be a pretty solid value. The kickers, I think, are totally fine on this slate. Normally I don't play both kickers in the same lineup, but one of the 2 kickers I'm fine with. The defenses, I could see the defenses having a good game here, especially because, both these quarterbacks for the most part will turn the ball over. Josh Allen's a really talented quarterback, but we know, he'll take risk. He'll throw the ball deep downfield when he probably shouldn't. He will take sacks. The Patriots defense, they've shown a ton of upside in fantasy this year. They're getting a ton of pressure on the quarterback. They're getting a lot of interceptions. They put up at least double-digit DK points in 6 straight games. I don't like to look too much into that because defense, for the most part, it's pretty random. It's really hard to predict what a defense is going to do on a weekly basis. But given the conditions in this game, given it could be somewhat sloppy, I think the Patriots and the Bills defense are totally fine. I'm not going to be heavy on the defenses, and I think they would be in my player pool. If I was playing 150 lineups, I would not exclude the defenses. And normally I pretty much don't even consider the defenses. Normally I just exclude them from my player pool. But on this slate, I think the defenses would definitely be in my player pool. I probably would prefer the Bills defense over the Patriots if I just had to pick one of the two. But outside of the defenses, once you get down like below 4K, I think the one guy that really does stand out here below 4K is Nelson Aguilar. He's only $3,000. He is really, really cheap. He hasn't really shown much of a ceiling this year. He's only got 3 games over double-digit DK points, but he's going to be on the field a ton. I think you're just rostering Aguilar just because of the usage he's going to get. I mean, you look at his last 4 games, or like last 5 games in terms of snap count, he's played at least 70% of the snaps in 5 straight games. So he's basically like in terms of playing time, he's their wide receiver 2. He's going to be the guy playing on the outside with Jacoby Myers. He's 3K. He probably gets 4 or 5 targets. I think Nelson Aguilar is probably one of the better value plays on this slate. Again, I think his floor is somewhat low, but I think there's obviously a ceiling there. Given anytime you're getting a receiver that's going to play 80% of the snaps and they're $3,000 on a showdown slate, like there's always upside for them. Even if they don't project to see a ton of opportunity in terms of targets, there's still opportunity for them to break off a long touchdown. If you're going to be on the field for that many snaps, anything could happen. So I think at 3K, Nelson Aguilar is probably one of the better cheap values if you're looking to go really cheap. I definitely like him a lot. The rest of these guys like Brandon Bolden, Jonnu Smith, Gabe Davis, I'm not really on. Gabe Davis, he's like their wide receiver 4. He probably gets a couple targets. You probably got to hope for a touchdown, but given how pass heavy the Bills offense normally is, there's always opportunity for Gabe Davis just because of how they run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, 4 wide receiver sets. They throw the ball a lot. Again, that could change here given the conditions for this game. But I think Gabe Davis is a playable punt option. I don't have a ton of confidence in him, though. And then Zach Moss, if he winds up being active for this game, he's viable. But, his touches, like even when he's been active, he really hasn't seen a ton of opportunity. I think at this point, Matt Breida is kind of ahead of him in the depth chart. So he's basically like their RB3 right now. So even if he's active, like it's not a guarantee that he gets a ton of opportunity or even steps on the field. It's $600, though. He's, I guess, playable if he winds up being active for this game, but we're going to have to just kind of wait and see there. I think if I'm going really cheap, I think Nelson Aguilar at 3K does look like a pretty good punt value play if you want to go this cheap. But that's probably it. I think that's really all the playable options, all the guys I have interest in. So talking through roster construction for this slate, in terms of pay-up options, I think it's clear, the guys we want to be paying up for, Josh Allen, Steph Diggs, Mac Jones. Outside of those top 3, like there's a lot of these guys in the mid-range definitely have low floors, like Damian Harris, Kendrick Bourne, Cole Beasley. Like none of these guys have massive ceilings. So I think this is kind of like a stars and scrubs slate for me. Like I really want to try and fit in Josh Allen, Steph Diggs, Mac Jones. Like if we try to build a Josh Allen captain lineup with both those 3 guys all at the top, you could probably make it work because you could play Nelson Aguilar at 3K, who's going to play 75-80% of the snaps, probably get 4 or 5 targets. I like him as a cheap value. You could play, one of the kickers, and then you could probably play like Dawson Knox. So $5,400 for Dawson Knox we could plug in, and then we could plug in one of the kickers. Nick Folk is currently questionable, so he might not be kicking for the Patriots. Keep an eye on that. I guess Norden would be he'd be the next kicker up. I guess he would be the guy that would kick in place of Folk. So keep an eye on that though. But if Nick Folk is active, obviously you could put him in this build, or you could just plug in. Well, you can't get Tyler Bass, but you could plug in Nick Folk. So like that's a lineup that I really like. Josh Allen captain with Steph Diggs, with Dawson Knox. Then you got Mac Jones, Nelson Aguilar, and the kicker. I think this is definitely like cash games. I think this is probably something you're going to see a lot of people play this lineup. It's going to be duplicated heavily. Probably not something I'd be running in the Millie Maker, but if you're playing cash on Showdown, like that's something that I think really stands out. Because I assume Nelson Aguilar is going to project out pretty well as a point per dollar value play. I think Dawson Knox looks like one of the better values below 6K. I think the kickers are fine values, but the mid-range, like these mid-range guys, obviously there's guys playable here. Cole Beasley, Jacoby Myers, Manny Sanders, but I'm not loving these mid-range options. I think this is definitely a slate where I want to be trying to jam in the top guys, both quarterbacks, get in Steph Diggs, and then kind of fit those value plays in that we talked about, because it's fairly easy to fit both quarterbacks and Steph Diggs if that is a route you want to go. And then if you wanted to go like a little bit different, maybe not pay up a captain, maybe go to one of these mid-range guys. Like you could definitely go to like Cole Beasley at captain, Jacoby Myers. This is not something I'd be doing in a ton of lineups, but I think like a Cole Beasley captain lineup would be fine. Normally if I play a receiver at captain, I want to pair the quarterback with him. And I would think even regardless, I would probably have Josh Allen in just about every lineup I made on this slate. So definitely want to get Josh Allen in there. I think we could probably fit Steph Diggs, Mac Jones as well. Then we could plug in like Nelson Aguilar at 3K. That leaves us enough to play not too much. So we might not be able to play Mac Jones or Steph Diggs. We might only be able to play one of the two here. So since we got Beasley captain with Allen, let's go with Mac Jones instead of Diggs. And then maybe we can fit in one of these other mid-range receivers. So maybe go Jacoby Myers, 7,200. That leaves us, 9,900 left for our last two spots. So we could play, we could play like Manny Sanders and Nelson Aguilar. So that's kind of another build that you could do that I like quite a bit. But you kind of see how I'm like looking to approach this slate. Definitely like Aguilar a lot for value, like Dawson Knox a lot for value. I think the kickers are fine values. I think Josh Allen's probably going to be a staple of my lineups. I think Steph Diggs is a really good pay-up option. I think Mac Jones gives you a pretty high floor. And then those mid-range guys, I don't have a strong stance when it comes to Harris, Bourne, Beasley, Myers, Sanders. Like I don't have a strong stance between any of those guys, but I think most of them are all playable. Harris probably my least favorite. I think Myers might be my favorite of the mid-range guys, but I think that's it for this Showdown slate, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I do appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed, please do hit the like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well. Again, check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. Go sign up for PrizePicks. Use code Noah when you do sign up, and check out their board for Monday night's game. Make some picks for yourself. They have a ton of props posted. They have a ton of fantasy point projections posted right now. They also have passing yard props, receiving yards, rushing yards. You can take over under on those as well. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 5 picks, win up to 10 extra money on PrizePicks. So if you want to check them out, sign up, use code Noah. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. But best of luck on this slate, guys. Thanks so much for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.